First, you have to know there was a school. We'll call it the mean school. Because the kids there were mean kids. And second, you have to know there was a new student at the school. We'll call her New Girl because she was a girl and she was new to the school. The other thing you need to know is this story is going to have a story inside a story. The first story begins when the mean school had an overnight field trip to the desert. They went to a place called The Fingers because, behind the campsite, there were red rock cliffs, and they looked like they were made up of a long row of giant rock fingers lined up and pointing at the sky. When the time came for the night program, the mean kids decided to scare New Girl, so they told her a scary story, and this was the story. There was a school group that went camping at the Fingers about 15 years before. One of the kids on the trip was named Becky. Becky woke up in the night and she heard something outside her tent. It was a scratching noise, but not like an animal or a tree. When she thought about it, it sounded like a finger scratching. Like someone was curling an index finger, making a come here gesture, and the fingernail would scratch against the tent. Becky started to get annoyed by it, and she figured the other kids were messing with her, so she grabbed her flashlight, pulled on her shoes, unzipped the door flap of her tent, and jumped out. There were no other kids near her tent. Becky looked around the tent and searched for leaves or branches or small animals that might be making the noise, but there was nothing. So Becky went back to the front of her tent, and the tent door was zipped closed. Becky was almost 100% positive she had left it unzipped when she went out looking for the noise, but now it was zipped. And then, coming from inside the tent, she heard it. Scratch, like a finger beckoning and the nails scraping against the fabric of the tent. Becky thought the kids from the school were still messing with her, so she grabbed the zipper and unzipped the door. The next morning, they found her, dead, with her own index fingers jabbed straight through her own eyes and into her brain. Afterward, Becky's school group heard that there had been a mental patient in the area escaped from the violent ward of a nearby mental hospital. The police hunted for him, but they never found him. This is where the story within a story ends, and this was the story that the mean kids from the mean school told to New Girl. So, that night at the Fingers, when it was lights out, and everyone was at least supposed to be in their sleeping bags, in their tents, just when New Girl was about to fall asleep, that was when she heard it. Scratch, 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 scratch. New Girl jammed her feet into her shoes, grabbed her flashlight, unzipped the flap of her tent, and jumped out into the night. In the dark bushes were scufflings of feet and muffled laughter. New Girl ran around the tent, but there was no one there. But when she got back to the front of her tent, she was 100% positive that she had left the door flap unzipped, but now it was zipped closed tight. New Girl stood looking at it for a minute, fuming, and then from inside the tent she heard it. She could almost see the finger in her mind that would make that scratch. It would be skinny and white, with swollen knuckles with black hair growing from them. The nail would be long and ragged and rimmed with dried blood. New Girl's anger rose in her. "I wish you were all dead!" she screamed, and unzipped the door of her tent. The next morning, New Girl woke up. It was early and quiet. After all the excitement, she had slept heavily. She put on her shoes, picked up her toothbrush and toothpaste, and stepped out into the early light. The first thing she noticed was that it was a beautiful day. The next thing she noticed was that no one else was awake yet. She looked around for signs of activity, and that's when she saw the Fingers, the red rocks catching the sun's first rays. And on the tips of the fingers, like fingernails, ragged, with dried blood around the edges, were all of the mean kids, white and quiet and very, very dead. Written below them, in letters 15 feet high, in smears of dripping red, were the words, "Wish granted, you're welcome."